Mbali Ntuli, founder and CEO of GroundWork Collective, joins us now. Mbali, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Look, we understand that ballots will be transported back to the IEC's national office in Centurion in Pretoria for counting. But just how safe is this process? I mean, couldn't there have been an electronic process to actually ensure that the votes are actually counted adequately at those voting stations?
Look, I can't speak. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I can't speak to whether having electronic voting being counted would have been better, given what we've seen in the discrepancies in other nations where they've been able to hijack certain devices and there's been questions. I think it's always safest to be able to do it manually. What I would agree, though, is that it should be counted manually there instead of being transported, because so much can happen in between that particular situation where they're leaving, London to come to South Africa. But as it stands, this is what we can do. Our job as observers is to make sure that the entire process is done with integrity and that we safeguard our democracy, even for those that are aboard. And we're looking forward. We have all our observers ready, and they're doing their final briefings with the IEC now. And I think that we can expect a lot of people to come out from what we're seeing and from what we're hearing from our volunteers overseas.
Mbali, talk to us about the fact that GroundWork, we understand, has actually observers abroad, and that you're actually part of the intricate part of the training of those observers. Talk to us about this, and has there been any incidents that you've witnessed so far in the areas?
So GroundWork Collective obviously is an organization that does a lot of civic participation, and one of the things that we've asked South Africans to do both here and abroad is to give them time and to safeguard their democracy, volunteer on the day. And ahead of that, what we've had to do is obviously train people. The ordinary South African often has only been in a voting station just to vote. They haven't actually done the observation, so we've been doing training with everyone. Obviously for those abroad, it's been online, but they're also doing in-person training today, just to fully make sure that they're aware of what needs to happen. They've got their accreditation from the IEC already, and I think that they are all quite excited. But GroundWork prides itself also on having developed an application, the first of its kind, that is able to tally this across both overseas and here. We will be able to collate all that information and make it available to the public, because we think that this is something that we should have as part of our culture. And we're hoping that we can even use it to start doing some modeling ahead of by-elections and local government elections. So it's really important that we have South Africans who are volunteering to do this work.
Very interesting that you mentioned that, Mbali. I mean, I'm sure a lot of South Africans didn't even know that ordinary South Africans can actually be observers. Talk to us about the type of training that you actually provide.
Yes, unfortunately, a lot of South Africans don't know many of the things that allow them to participate fully in their democracy, and this is why it's such a big goal of ours to make sure that people don't only get empowered in terms of the theoretical knowledge, but then that we actually show them the practical steps of what they can do. So not just observing elections or registering, but even how they can access their ward committees, IDPs, go to local councils, legislatures. So that's all a part of the journey that we intend on taking South Africans on. But in terms of the actual training, we train them on what observers do. What are the powers and duties? Can they touch a ballot? Can they assist voters? What are they supposed to do? Where do they stand in the voting station? When do they, say that someone might need assistance? It's all really based on, Section 84 of the Electoral Act. And how an observer needs to govern. It's very important that people also understand that we are observers, not monitors, which is two different things, and that our job is to make sure that what's supposed to happen actually happens, whereas those monitors often will be the ones to intervene and do things like whether they consider it being free and fair. That's not the job. Our job is to make sure that even if a political party or candidate gets one vote in some obscure place where they never thought they would get, they need to make sure that somebody is there to say that they got that vote in case there's shenanigans on the day. And then, of course, we know that this is such a hotly contested election that we've also made sure that people are aware of even things like people busing, people in or doing busing operations, or people being canvassed in the lines. So our observers know to look out for the various things that sometimes misbehaving political players can do. And to be able to report that or to escalate it either to ourselves or to the relevant IEC officials.
And then, Mbali, very quickly in closing, I mean, can one then be a voter and also be an observer at the same time?
100%. Voting is an absolute right to every South African, so there's no way that it could be denied. What happens if you are an observer is that when you arrive at the station for your shift, you vote first and then you take on your duties of being an observer.
Thank you so much for that information. Mbali Ntuli, the GroundWork Collective CEO, of course, talking to us about that important aspect of elections, and that is the election observers.